When a wild Russian fighter challenged Jason Statham in front of an entire underground gym, no one expected what would happen next. Jason wasn't there to fight, but when he was forced to, he unleashed a lesson no one in that room would ever forget. Stay with us until the end, because what Jason does in the final moments will change the way you see true strength forever. The cold wind of Chicago sliced through the cracked windows of the underground gym, carrying with it the stale scent of sweat, old leather, and blood not yet scrubbed from the mats. Apex Iron Gym wasn't just a place for training. It was a battlefield, a raw furnace that molded the brutal into legends and broke the weak without mercy, the kind of place where the heavy thud of fists against flesh was as common as breathing, and where the respect you earn today could vanish tomorrow with a single misstep. Jason Statham stepped inside with the weight of the outside world still clinging to his jacket, the door creaking shut behind him like a final warning. No entourage, no flashing cameras, just him, blending into the concrete decay, a ghost among warriors. His hood was pulled low, hiding the familiar lines of his face, but the posture, the coiled stillness, betrayed something different. He moved like a man who understood violence not as spectacle, but as language. Inside, bodies moved with calculated violence. Fighters grunted through their drills, pads cracked under heavy strikes, and a Bluetooth speaker in the corner blasted distorted bass into the thick air. Coaches barked orders like generals overseeing a war. And in the center of it all, beneath the flickering industrial lights, stood a man who seemed less a fighter and more a beast, cut loose from reason itself. Mikhail Dragunov. 6'4", shoulders broad enough to block the light, eyes cold and feral. His fists were wrapped not just in tape but in a reputation that preceded him, an undefeated force from the Russian underground, known for breaking bones and egos with a grin stretched too wide across his scarred face. Every strike he threw during sparring carried an extra malice, a promise of destruction. His training partners wore bruises like armor, fear etched into the way they moved around him. Jason lingered by the cracked mirrors at the edge of the gym, arms folded, silently observing. He wasn't there to challenge, to disrupt. But in a place like Apex, presence alone was enough. Mikhail's eyes found him within minutes, sensing the shift in the air like a wolf scenting another predator. The gym seemed to slow around them, an invisible current pulling attention toward the inevitable clash. Even without a word spoken, the story began writing itself into the cracked floors and stained mats. Outsider, intruder, prey. In one corner, a wiry teenage boy stumbled through a series of footwork drills, sweat dripping from his brow, fists trembling with effort. His coach, lost in the glow of his phone, muttered half-hearted instructions without lifting his gaze. Jason watched, the smallest crease forming between his brows. There was something about the boy, the desperate hunger to improve, the aching loneliness of trying and failing under indifferent eyes. Jason shifted his weight, moved closer. His steps were silent, absorbed by the battered mats. One subtle correction of the boy's stance, a gentle adjustment of the rear foot, a reminder to breathe through the chaos. Nothing loud, nothing disruptive. Just a thread of knowledge offered without expectation. For a moment, the boy's movement smoothed, finding a rare grace. His eyes lit up with something fragile and bright. And across the gym, Mikhail Dragunov saw it, the change in focus, the flicker of respect not directed at him. It ignited something dark and furious beneath his ribs. The Russian abandoned his sparring partner mid-round, wraps dangling from his fists, storming across the floor with the quiet rage of a bomb about to detonate. The room shifted with him, tension thickening in the heavy, humid air. Fighters paused mid-drill, coaches leaned closer, phones came up, almost instinctively. The scent of blood was no longer distant. It was here, pulsing through the concrete walls. Mikhail stopped inches from Jason, looming. His presence was a weapon, sharpened by years of unquestioned dominance. He puffed himself larger, as if physical mass could intimidate a man who had stood before far worse monsters than this. Jason did not move, not an inch. Their eyes locked, one brimming with snarling arrogance, the other with an unnerving, unshakable calm. The gym waited, breathless. The boy Jason had helped shrank back into the shadows, gripping his towel like a shield. Whispers slithered through the crowd like snakes in tall grass. Some murmured Jason's name, others scoffed, betting on how quickly the movie star would crumble. But Jason remained a stone in the river of tension, letting it wash over him without surrendering a thing. Mikhail's grin twisted into something meaner, his voice slashed through the charged silence, the words dripping with mocking venom. His posture dared Jason to respond, to break the stillness with the first mistake. Still, Jason said nothing. In his world, noise was weakness. The Russian spat at the mat between them, flexing the muscles along his arms as if already envisioning how he would dismantle the smaller man. His breath smelled of cheap vodka and worse choices. Somewhere, the music cut off abruptly, leaving only the sound of heartbeats and the soft hum of the fluorescent lights. Jason slowly lowered his hood, exposing the sharp angles of his jaw, the scars that life and fights past had carved into his skin. The room rippled with realization. The stories were true. He was not just another Hollywood face with a choreographed punch. Mikhail scoffed louder, tossing his training gloves to the ground with a theatrical shrug. They landed at Jason's feet, a silent ultimatum pounding louder than any scream. The gloves, the challenge, the choice. Jason's gaze dropped to the battered leather lying before him. His breathing remained slow, steady, measured, the kind of breathing that didn't belong to actors or dreamers but to men who had survived real wars. A single step forward would change everything, and everyone in that gym could feel it. The air crackled with a hunger for violence, for spectacle, for blood. Phones angled higher. Breath was held. The building itself seemed to lean closer, waiting to see if the spark would become an inferno. Jason bent at the waist, knees flexing with controlled grace, and picked up the gloves without breaking eye contact with the Russian. The simple act echoed like a gunshot through the silence. No speeches, no boasts. Just a man preparing himself for what could not be avoided. Mikhail's grin faltered for the first time, uncertainty flickering behind the brutal bravado. Jason slowly straightened, slipping his hands into the gloves with quiet finality. His body language shifted, not boastful, not aggressive, simply ready. The crowd swayed closer, an unspoken circle of predators around fresh prey. The trainers exchanged glances, sensing that what was about to unfold would not be a casual spar. This would be something different, something remembered. Jason rolled his shoulders once, a minor adjustment, but it felt like a tectonic shift beneath the floor. Mikhail laughed, a short, brittle bark, masking the growing weight of the moment pressing down on him. Somewhere in the shadows, the boy Jason had helped pressed his towel harder against his chest, his wide eyes reflecting awe, fear, and hope. Jason's eyes never left Mikhail's. There would be no escape, no room for tricks, only a lesson long overdue. And as the gym held its collective breath, teetering on the edge of eruption, the last thing anyone saw before the chaos ignited was the glint in Jason's eyes, a glint that said he had seen monsters far worse than Mikhail Dragunov and had walked away from them every time. The storm was no longer coming. It was already here. Mikhail tightened his fists, smirked wider, and lunged. The collision between them would tear the room apart before anyone could even scream. Mikhail's lunge tore through the air like a missile, his bulk moving with frightening speed. A freight train aimed straight for Jason's chest. The crowd recoiled instinctively, a collective flinch as the inevitable crash unfolded. But Jason did not meet force with force. Instead, he shifted a single, precise step to the left, letting the Russian's momentum roar past him harmlessly. The miss was a wound to Mikhail's pride deeper than any punch. He stumbled slightly, catching himself with a low snarl vibrating from his chest. Around them, the circle of fighters swelled tighter, feeding off the raw energy crackling between the two men. Phones were raised high now, blinking red lights capturing every heartbeat, every bead of sweat. Jason stood his ground, calm, breathing steady, gloves loose at his sides. His silence was not passive. It was the sound of judgment, of patience weaponized. Mikhail roared in frustration, pounding his fists together with a sound like splitting wood. He circled Jason with heavy steps, spitting taunts that dripped from his mouth like venom. Every word was a provocation, designed to claw into Jason's mind, to drag him down into the mud of rage where Mikhail reigned supreme. Jason didn't bite. His eyes followed Mikhail's movements, detached yet deadly, the way a mountain watches a storm beat uselessly against its flanks. The Russian grew louder, flailing insults like wild punches. He mocked Jason's age, his movies, his supposed softness. He jabbed at the Hollywood image, trying to shred it into something worth breaking. Around them, the gym pulsed with hunger, the spectators shifting from admiration to bloodlust, eager to see the outsider crushed. Still, Jason remained immovable, a stone anchored in a river of noise. The attacks escalated. Mikhail shifted tactics, prowling over to a group of young fighters huddled by the cracked mirrors. His eyes locked on the boy Jason had helped, the wiry teenager still clutching his towel, trembling under the Russian's shadow. Without warning, Mikhail grabbed the boy's training mitts and tossed them across the floor like trash. He barked a guttural laugh, slamming his palm against the boy's chest and sending him stumbling back, humiliation burning across his young face. The crowd roared, some laughing, some grimacing. The boy's wide eyes flickered desperately to Jason. In that moment, something shifted deep inside the silence Jason had wrapped around himself. It wasn't pride that stirred him. It wasn't wounded ego. It was something colder, deeper, a boundary crossed that demanded balance be restored. Mikhail, sensing the tremor beneath Jason's stillness, smiled wider, mistaking it for a crack in the armor. He strutted back to the center of the gym, chest heaving, arms raised like a conquering beast. He wanted a show. He wanted a scene. Jason intended to give him something else entirely. Slowly, deliberately, Jason bent down and picked up the battered gloves Mikhail had thrown earlier. The leather was worn, scarred from countless wars in countless cages. They fit over his fists like old memories sliding back into place. He rose, each movement sharpening the air like a blade unsheathed. The gym fell into a hushed reverence, as if instinctively understanding that something sacred and dangerous was unfolding before their eyes. Jason's shoulders squared, his posture relaxed yet brimming with a lethal readiness that no amount of shouting could fabricate. His gaze locked on Mikhail, not with anger but with something far more unsettling, dispassionate judgment. There would be no theatrics, no grandstanding, only consequences. Mikhail barked a laugh, stretching his arms wide, inviting the attack. His body language dripped with mockery, but there was a twitch at the corner of his eye, a hesitation betraying the first seeds of doubt. Jason took a slow step forward, then another. Each stride was a verdict rendered in silence. Mikhail's smirk faltered, then reasserted itself with a desperate bellow. He lunged again, swinging wide, a haymaker designed more to humiliate than to hit. Jason pivoted effortlessly, letting the punch slice empty air. His glove brushed Mikhail's shoulder in passing, a whisper of what was coming. The Russian spun, frustration flaring red across his face. Jason circled him now, calm, coiled, breathing deep and slow. Every movement spoke in a language older than words, a conversation carved in broken bones and shattered pride. Around them, the crowd leaned closer, senses sharpened by the scent of imminent violence. Mikhail lashed out with a kick sloppy with rage. Jason absorbed it, stepping back, adjusting, never breaking the steady rhythm of his breathing. The game had shifted. Mikhail had wanted chaos. Jason had brought control. The Russian pressed harder, throwing reckless combinations, each more furious than the last. His punches thundered against Jason's arms and sides, some grazing, some landing, but never truly connecting. Jason absorbed the storm, studying it, learning with every impact. And then, just as Mikhail reared back for another wild swing, Jason moved, not with brutality, with precision. His glove darted forward, a flicker of motion, tapping the side of Mikhail's ribs, a surgeon's strike, placed not to hurt, but to disarm. Mikhail froze, confused by the lack of resistance. Jason tilted his head slightly, a silent invitation. Come, try again. The Russian's face twisted into a snarl, the crowd screaming now for blood, for spectacle, for someone to break. Mikhail obliged, lunging forward with reckless abandon. Jason stepped aside with the grace of a man dancing through falling knives. The Russian crashed into the wall of bodies at the edge of the circle, curses spilling from his lips. When he turned, Jason was already waiting, gloves loose, stance relaxed, breathing slow. And for the first time since he had walked into Apex Iron Gym, Jason smiled. It wasn't a smile of mockery, it wasn't smug. It was the smile of a man who had seen everything his opponent had to offer, and remained unimpressed. Mikhail saw it too, and rage twisted into something uglier, something desperate. He would not lose face in front of the fighters he ruled. He would not allow this outsider to walk away intact. No longer seeking to provoke, Mikhail charged with everything he had, a raging bull barreling toward the matador. Jason didn't flinch. He waited, measured, precise. The moment Mikhail committed, Jason sidestepped and answered. Not with fists, not yet, but with patience sharpened into a weapon. Mikhail stumbled again, chest heaving, sweat pouring down his temples. His power was real, but it was wild, wasted in chaos. Jason's power was different. It was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And it was coming. The gym felt it. The fighters sensed it. Even the boy, clutching his towel tighter, could feel the shift. The heavy electric pull of fate drawing tight. One final breath filled Jason's lungs. The next exchange would decide everything. Jason Statham hasn't even unleashed his full strength yet, and Mikhail Dragunov has no idea what's coming next. The real storm is just beginning. If you don't want to miss the moment Jason turns this fight upside down, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. Part 2 is coming soon, and trust me, you'll want to be here when the tables finally turn.